I did all the things, calling in the one, hiring the coach, therapy, healers, writing letters to myself, getting clearer and clearer and clearer. And part of that is walking away from things that weren't fully in alignment.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited. From the moment I wake up till the instant I go to sleep, as most of you know, my day is crazy full. I often share my schedules on good old Instagram, but for those of you who don't know, I am running 3 inspiring businesses. I have 3 gorgeous children running around the house constantly. And in between helping them with school, creating alone time with the D, and also carving out some solo soul time for myself, there is basically no room left in the day for anything else. I really do know how it feels when I load up on unhealthy foods, and it's not a great look. I don't have time to stress about these added fillers or sugars or whether my food will actually make me and my family feel good and be nutritious. And that's what I love about Philosophy Superfoods and why I started this company. I know that they are trustworthy, that they are packed with high vibe antioxidants, minerals, adaptogens that all help me deal with what the world throws at me each day. I love my life. I love my children and my jobs, and I want to be able to really thrive in all of these things and put on a bunch of different hats and roll with the punches. And Philosophy Superfoods really allows me and supports me in wearing all those hats. If you would like to stock up on our Philosophy Superfoods, which are always organic, raw, incredibly sourced nutrients, use the code IGNITED, that's IGNTD, to stock up for you and your loved ones. You and your body will feel so grateful for it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe. Today, I am so excited for this episode. We recorded it a bit ago, right after Rachelle and Tom got engaged. Rachelle is my soul sister, a member of this family, one of my very, very, very closest friends. And we are so excited to share on the week of Valentine's Day, Rachelle and Tom's love story and Rachelle's journey, really. This is Rachelle's journey through heartbreak and love and heartbreak again and finding her person. And as 2 people who have been together, Adi and I, for so long now, we've known each other for 16 years and we've been married for 11 years. We know firsthand how hard relationships are, and especially with your person.
Well, they're also fun and exciting and amazing. They're not all hard. We share all of that with you here, I think. But the cool thing about Rachelle and Tom's story is how unexpected it is. And I'm not going to give it away because, why would you listen after? But if there's a silver lining to the experience we've all been going through for the last year, this is it. And what I love about the story more than anything else is you just don't know. You just don't know. We walk around and we think I'm having a shitty day, or the world's ending, or I just suffered through something really traumatic. And then oftentimes life just has this way of pivoting and turning, and you go, oh my God, that was actually one of my biggest growth moments, or I learned more about myself in that moment than ever, or I met the love of my life. And so that's to me the coolest part of this.
Yeah, we are so excited to share. We get into details here about all types of traumas and past experiences that Rachelle has been to that led her to this moment, falling in love with the love of her life.
Yeah, we also talk about online dating in general. Sophie and I are kind of lucky in the fact that we just didn't have to do this. When we were dating, this insanity of swiping, etc., was not a real thing. We talk about that experience, and then dating in the age of COVID, all the amazingness that those of you who are single listening right now, or those of you who've been just connecting recently in the last year or so, deal with.
Yeah, and really just trying to amp you up with good vibes. And for anyone that's still searching for their partner, if you are searching, there is love around the bend, and you never, ever know. It's unexpected sometimes, but there is hope. And we want to help you energetically, spiritually call in your one.
Exactly. So hold on to your seats. Give us a minute right here, and we will be right back with this incredible story. All right, everybody. Welcome back to our favorite part, the conversation for today's episode. We've got a repeat guest, but before I even bring Rachelle, a dear, dear friend of ours, on, I want to say we've heard from a lot of you guys over these last 5, 6, 7. This thing's lasted forever. It's insane about how weird dating is during this time. And man, we talked to so many of our friends who have tried to date back like when we were all on lockdown, all the way through the whole progression.
Trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and just like, look, masks, epidemic, we all get it, but we're also still people. So people want to connect. They want to meet somebody. They want to have somebody to hold at night. Sex, like all the stuff that still happens, epidemic or not, is still happening. But it's so weird. It's just so strange. People trying to go on dates. For a while, you could only walk outside. You couldn't actually go anywhere.
Yeah, and that mostly what we hear about is the awkwardness. And today we're sharing a story of love, and we'll talk about all of it, but especially, yes, connecting to the pandemic. And you found love right at the beginning of the pandemic and then fell in love during the pandemic. Tell us more. Tell us more. Jump in.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be back. I remember the first podcast. I mean, it's interesting that, during this year of utter chaos and turmoil and sadness and confusion, this has been the sweetest year of my life. Tom and I met 4 weeks before the pandemic online, matching golden doodles, and we started talking for 4 weeks. He was living in San Francisco. I'm in LA, and I felt something off the phone. I felt a connection, and some people were like, "Really, Rachelle?" I felt something different. I've never had that before. I'm so used to like that physical contact, that opportunity to be close with each other. And that's why I tell people now it could be a really great time to date and get to know someone without getting physical right away. Those 4 weeks of journeying through FaceTime, his world, he'd bring me to like his lunch break and where he was getting a deli sandwich and just have me on FaceTime. We got to know so much about each other and understand our core values, and we were in alignment. And and then quarantine began.
Well, so a couple of things right there. I mean, first of all, we talked to some of our friends, girlfriends, younger girlfriends of yourself who are kind of like in this dating world, and the question of, well, do I like hook up early? Is a physical connection early okay or not? And I've told you this, we've talked about this quite a bit.
Pandemic or not, this is a conversation that a lot of our single friends, when they come and chat with us and they're talking about their love story, they're talking about their challenges being single, they talk about their challenges finding a partner, and over again, a theme has been, well, when do you have sex?
Yeah, and then what we hear a lot of times is when you hook up kind of, there can be a nice buildup, you hook up kind of early, and then it kind of fizzles out, and the person doesn't connect at lunchtime, and they're definitely not putting you on FaceTime during lunchtime. They may just shoot you a text. And there's always this weird give and take about, well, I am interested, I do want it, but how long do I hold off for? So you guys, by definition, because you were literally 7 hours away driving, you had to hold off for that first month. And if I remember the story right, he was coming down to see you for the first time for the weekend.
Yes. So we had a 3-day date planned. He was supposed to go to Thailand with his 2 younger brothers. I was taking myself on a yoga retreat to Mexico, and our calendars were really full. So we had a 3-day date planned. And as he came to visit, the world was closing. The world
like
was shutting down.
Day or something,
like the next day, that Saturday, we saw each other on a Thursday. That that Friday, he invited me to Shabbat dinner with his family, which in my world is like the sweetest thing ever. Some people are like, wait, what? You're already meeting the family? You know, that's just part of the culture. And so as the world is shutting down and our trips are getting canceled, I'm meeting him and really his family at the first time. And they're giving me soup and toilet paper. And no, actually though,
for everybody who doesn't remember, when the onslaught on Target, Sam's Club and Costco was happening, and you couldn't get toilet paper.
Like,
I remember you told us, you were like, guys, they gave me toilet paper.
Yeah. It'd be quite the gesture.
And so then, you know, we look back, like our honeymoon chapter is unfazed, is all with a backdrop of quarantine. We got one concert in before, went to Tame Impala, and then the world shut down, and Tom, there was no need for him to go back to San Francisco. And so, yeah, we
figured it out.
Yeah.
Figured it out. So we moved in with you.
Yes, he moved in with me. And just to go back for a second, when you talk about, you know, people and dating and being too intimate too soon, I think for someone like me who had in severe attachment challenges, giving my body up too soon tricked my mind and tricked my heart. So
say more about that.
So, you know, my mom passed away when I was younger. It happened really tragically. No one was really there to take care of me. So this more insecure style of attachment was formed, where I was constantly looking for love outside of me, looking for support outside of me, more anxious when we're looking at attachment theory.
Yep.
And so and that kind of has played out how I navigate and lived through in the world before I became really aware of it. And I've done so much work around this to the point where almost a year ago, I think I was talking with you, Soph, where I was just like fed up with all the wounded partners I was attracting, that I was like, what would it be like just to meet someone from a great family who didn't have all the ish that necessarily I have? And that's Tom and his family. And that rings true really at the beginning of the pandemic. And when all the race stuff was happening, my anxiety was kicked up, and all he had to say were 2 words, "Kol beseder," which means everything's going to be okay. And that's what his dad tells his mom. And everything in my nervous system would just drop. And it was like I could take a big exhale. And so there's so much healing that has happened in my own attachment challenges in just these past 7-8 months with him and his family in my life now.
I love it. I mean, there's so much in here, right? Like you talked about avoidant or anxious or insecure attachment, and that as a concept. And then to bring somebody on, or to allow somebody into your life who maybe doesn't look at things through that lens, can sometimes feel amazing in the beginning for a lot of people who are insecurely attached in one way or another, but then make you really want to run or test them over and over and over, because the idea around having insecure attachment is you don't really believe that the other people are going to stay there, right? You believe that no matter what happens, how good it is, how much they love you, how much they pretend to love you, whatever that is, that they're going to escape it some way. So what I love about this story that is so insane, it's almost like, look, you know, Sophie and I always loved looking for a silver lining to whatever it is. And we were joking, I won't give the punchline for this yet, but we were joking recently when we were together with you guys on a fabulous weekend that
best weekend of my life.
If this was the whole point of Corona, then maybe it was still worth it. And I say that slightly in jest, because obviously Corona has affected a ton of people in a really, really serious way, but you couldn't plan this better. Especially, we haven't talked about your history, but like we'll talk about it a little bit. But historically, it's like it would be these really fiery, intense relationships for a short period of time that would kind of like explode.
Yes.
And so then this thing hits. There's a month of buildup. And as you mentioned, a lot of us were kind of like, okay, well, we'll see where this goes. He shows up for the weekend and he doesn't leave for 6 months. So like, I want everybody who's listening right now, just think to yourself, if you're meeting somebody new right now, or think of your last relationship and imagine that a weekend into actually meeting each other, you are now essentially, for all intents and purposes, locked in a room together for months. Like for the first 3 months, you couldn't go anywhere.
Except your house.
Except our house. It was a case study.
So I want you to talk about that. Like now you're behind it so that you know where it led. But what was it like to give up your space, to have somebody you expected to come in for a weekend to really be there all the time?
Yeah, in the beginning, like the first week, it was like, oh, we're playing house. This is fun. Then second week, we both got sick. This was before there was any testing available. We think we may have had it. I knew, knock on wood, intuitively, if I were to get sick, I'm super healthy. My body will heal itself. I just had symptoms of a cold for a weekend. Tom had body aches for a full week. So all of a sudden I'm in week 2 and Tom is wearing these lime green Hollister sweatpants for 5 days in a row. And I'm like, if you don't take these sweatpants off, I don't know what is going to happen. So it was like a crash course into, knowing what someone's like in every season, right? Go through a pandemic,
intimacy,
get sick together. Yeah. And listen, I don't live in the biggest place. I live in a cute little 1.5 bedroom bungalow and with 2 big golden doodles. So it's definitely a tight squeeze. But with the challenges, the blessings far outweighed them.
I love it because the thing I hate most about dating and the thing I'm most grateful for, I will hopefully never have to do again for the entire rest of my life, is that part in relationships where you're actually just pretending.
Where you're trying too hard.
You're just pretending.
Yep.
You're actually sick and you call them pretending you're not sick, but you're like, hey, I have to cancel. I have to stay late at work. Like you're barely able to breathe. And you had the shittiest day, but you dress up and you try to pretend like it's all good. You guys kept that up for a week, it sounds like.
Yeah,
and then by the second week, it fell apart.
Well, it's funny because my best friend Rachel, when I was kind of like texting her, kind of like venting, week 2, week 3, she's like, remember a few months ago when you're like, I don't want to deal with dating. I just want to get into like the Netflix and sweatpants phase. Well,
here you are.
Just created it. Here it is.
Well, and I want to actually hit on that for a moment. So how powerful our minds are. Mm-hmm. And we both, Rachelle and I, are completely aligned in the way that we manifest things and the way that we believe that we are co-creators in our experience. And you wrote a letter to yourself. And do you remember this?
Remind me. I wrote many letters.
You wrote many letters. And you talked about what you wanted in a partner.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. It's, tapping back into where we're talking about attachment stuff. Like I learned at a young age with my mom dying that when you love someone, they die. And so my navigating life, it's been coming back to faith and hope and trust when I learned not to trust, when I learned I couldn't trust the universe or God or people. And so, I somehow always believed, like if there was one thing I dreamed about, it was my person starting a family one day. And I have had a very colorful roller coaster of experiences that now I can look back on there were such invaluable lessons in every single relationship that has brought me to this point. And like, I did all the things, calling in the one, hiring the coach, therapy, healers, writing letters to myself, getting clearer and clearer and clearer. And part of that is walking away from things that weren't fully in alignment.
Yes.
And like, there was a beautiful person I dated right before Tom. And for the first time, you were like, nuh-uh, that's not it. And I knew, and I gave it a shot. And I was willing to walk away from something that was good for something that was great.
And there were a lot of boyfriends along the way that you stayed too long.
And girlfriends.
And you tried to pull and you tried to push and you tried to manipulate. Well, maybe this is the one, but maybe I don't want to have kids. Yeah. Maybe you started to put your own needs aside. Yeah. The actual most authentic aligned version of you aside so that you could get the thing you wanted.
Yeah. Because I didn't want to be alone. I craved partnership and everyone around me was having these relationships and
or it seems so, right?
It seems so, yeah.
When you're not in one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I feel like one of the stories I want to share is there was a relationship that started about 4 years ago. We had an on and off journey for a few years. You guys know who it is. You guys are inside my world. And this is what I tell people now when I coach them with relationship stuff is like, I always know right away. There's something that tells me right away. And something told me right away 4 or 5 years ago was that this person didn't want to have children. And yet he fed me crumbs throughout the year saying, if and only if one day things are in alignment in the world and blah, 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 then maybe I will want to. It's very different than someone saying, yeah, I can't wait to be a father. Yeah, I can't wait to have kids. And so I continued to kind of take the crumbs. We had an on and off journey. And ultimately, you know, when it was time to close the chapter fully, it was smack in my face. Like, this is not going to be the father of my kids. And fast forward 2 months into quarantine, and Tom and I are in our sweatpants chilling on the couch, and we're watching a movie, and there's a little kid in the movie, and Tom just looks over at me and he's just like, I can't wait to meet our kids one day. They're going to be so cute. Everything in my body just softened. I started crying. He's like, what's wrong? I'm like, you don't understand. Like, this is what I knew was possible. And so it's so important to, you know, those moments where I had to walk away from stuff because of the greater vision and feeling. I knew that was possible.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if anybody listening has gone through substantial trauma ever in your life, then I hate to say it this simply, but the road back is normally not easy.
Yeah.
Because it takes a long time and many different experiences and all those little lessons you said you gleaned from each one of these relationships to show your brain that there is another way. And this last relationship that you mentioned before Tom, you still showed up to it completely differently than you had for many relationships before. So, you know, this is that thing that I talk to people a lot about. Everybody wants immediate shifts. But I don't care who you listen to around this. I just love no matter how you feel about Tony Robbins as a person, I really love this quote from him, which is, you know, people overestimate what they can get done in a year and greatly underestimate what they can get done in a decade. And to me, when I look at your story, and I mean, we've known you for what, like 5, 6, 7 years now. It's like, it's like you see the changes over those 7, 8 years, and they are massive.
Yeah.
Right. But you pick any given moment in time, and it feels like, oh my God, I'm never going to get where I want to get. Yeah. And I think that's an important lesson. I think that's also when you talked in the beginning, if I can just be crude, like that's the reason why people fuck early is because you want the connection and you're scared that you're going to lose the thing already anyway if you just hang out for too long, or maybe they won't want me because I didn't give them what I think they wanted,
or they won't love the real me, so I better give them
something,
the shiniest thing I can possibly give them.
Yeah, and the problem is that in doing that, it's not that you're giving up part of yourself. I'm not saying that having sex with somebody is like losing part of yourself or anything like that, but it changes the entity. It changes the basis of the relationship. And what's so beautiful about what you guys went through is, you know, it's hard. Like, people escape early in a relationship. You spend a weekend with them and then you go away. You ghost them for a couple of days. You don't talk to them. You had a bad thing happen.
Games.
You hide.
The amount of games.
I think what was so special about in the beginning, Tom and I, right away, our communication was exactly the same. He got off the app right away. He FaceTimed me right away. It was just, we were in constant communication, which is what works for me. Not like major, but it was just, there was no games. There was no, where are you, Sophie? Give me your location.
You haven't responded in 35 minutes.
No, but knowing what you need consistent communication.
Just thought of like throughout, you know, but we were both the same way and there were no games. There was a point, actually, I think you remember, where before, when he was on his way here, I'm like, what if he's not real? What if he's like,
you've been like catfish or something?
Like, what if this dog's not real? What if this?
That's so fun. And shit like that happens. But obviously you both were also ready, and Tom's not here right now. So we can't talk to him about what was the situation for him. But also, when you know his story, he was close to being ready to kind of move forward with somebody before, and it just blew up.
Yeah, it didn't work.
It just blew up. And so, like, I think the other important thing, because you mentioned this, you know, when you know, the other person you're in a relationship with has to be willing to put in the same effort, work, etc., that you're willing. We talk about this all the time.
And it's timing too.
It's timing. And these are the two cliches that I always would fight. You know, when you know, all right, people, really? And then the whole thing with timing, you know, and it's now being on the other side. It's so true. And Tom and I talk about this often. If we met a year ago, 2 years ago, it wouldn't have worked.
Yep.
No.
He had to go through a few things. I had to go through a few things. So we're coming to this relationship two whole people.
Absolutely.
And like coming back to what you were saying about...
No, let's go back real quick to two whole people.
Yeah.
Let's just focus on that for a moment, because this is a theme that we've been talking about a lot lately. Two whole individuals. If you would have met a year before that, you weren't in your most whole, complete form. And same for Tom. Talk about a little bit about that.
Yeah. You know, my journey with psychology, spirituality, my own inner work and practice, and we say coming back to faith, and how do I be the person that I want to attract? How do I show up as a person that I also want to call in and seek in my life? So the work starts with me, always coming back to me.
What kind of work were you doing? All of it.
All of
I know.
it.
But you're the prime example. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like you woke up when you were really in the work your whole life.
My whole life, whether it's therapy, whether it was healers, like I said, coaching. Last year, I hired an amazing coach for 5 months. It was really expensive. She's a relationship coach, Vicky Falcone. I love her. And it was the best work we did, but it was about me. It starts with me and looking at my patterning and getting clear on, okay, if this is what you want, but yet you're choosing something different, I have to look at me. So if I want to see changes in my life, it's got to start here first and foremost. And then when you talk about those moments where you've seen where it was utter despair or sadness, the valley of being out of a relationship and sadness. And it was on me to come back to the spirituality of believing in something greater, that what I'm seeking is seeking me.
And even believing in your own value, right? So part of being a whole person is not depending on somebody else to make you worth anything, but rather believing that you have some worth that you're bringing to this. And that doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It doesn't mean you have to have no flaws. It doesn't mean you have to know how to handle everything with grace. We're all human and we all have our flaws and we all have weaknesses, and they will shine in moments of stress. But just because you're imperfect doesn't mean you're worthless. And I think a lot of us, especially we're in those weird places around relationships that aren't serving us well, we're trying to figure out the right way to configure the relationship so we feel okay in our world.
What you also did some other manifestation little techniques, like having pictures around your house.
Yeah,
Talk
I love
about
this
that.
one. Yeah, I wrote like a love letter. Also wrote a letter to my mom and to God, and then I also put pictures of my favorite couples in my living room and like a it's called like the love corner, and you guys are on there with the kids, and because every day I got, not only do I feel surrounded by love in my living room now, but looking at each couple. It's not because I want everything each couple represents, but aspects of it. And it showed me if it can happen for them, then it can happen for me.
Yes.
And not from a place of lack, but a place of like, oh my God, I'm so lucky to have these beautiful couples in my life. Thank you for showing me what is possible and what's soon to come. So anytime I was feeling despair and sadness, which happened a lot, I'd walk myself down and I'd look in front of the photos as a ritual and a practice so that I could really believe it in my being and in my cells.
That's so cool. It's so different than the mentality of some people of like being jealous of other success, right?
Well,
it's this idea of
there was another shift there in my observing Rachelle in our friendship through the 7-8 years of relationships, ebbs and flows, ins and outs. There were certain moments when I remember you just would shift a habit and it was gone. You just grew out of it. You just grew through it. You did the work. And you did so much work over time. And you kept just saying like, what else can I possibly do? But then there's be these things that would mirror back at you and you'd be like, oh, there's that thing. It's still here. It's still present. It's showing up for me in our friendship or in your relationship with X or whoever it is. And the moving through the thing and really showing up to it in a different way, like Adi said, most people are just jealous of their friends that have successful relationships. And when you were in a dark place, you would be that way. And you'd be like, I don't want to talk to you right now. And I try and give you advice, or like I stopped giving advice because who am I to give advice on a single living when I'm married?
Yeah. Right? Well, there's like a time and place to hang out with your couple friends, and there's a time and place to hang out with your single friends because like, okay, cool. Like also if I'm going to be hanging out with you guys every weekend, how am I meeting someone? Yes. So there's that fine balance, but also, I mean, if there's anything I've learned is to not trust the thoughts in my mind when I'm in a dark place.
Sure. And how about that power of switching jealousy, that low vibration energy of jealousy into abundance? Look at these people in my life that are right next to me in my circle, in my camp. We're fighting with you. So keeping people in your life, I think that's a huge part of when you're trying to call in love or call in really high vibrational friendships or relationships in your life. You have to be around that in which you want.
Absolutely.
Right?
And also, I didn't have any role models growing up. You know, my mom died really young. My dad was physically there, but checked out in every other way. I didn't have anyone showing me what a healthy relationship and or family looks like. And so really, you know, meeting you guys was like the start of that for me, being around you, being around the family, even with all the ups and downs that you guys have experienced.
You bet you don't know about those. You've never been there.
Yeah.
You've never personally been there for those or anything.
No.
We're perfect.
I mean,
We're perfect.
That's what's so funny to me about this whole, not this whole conversation, but this whole concept, right? Is when people aren't in a relationship, a consistent kind of long-term relationship, there are a lot of assumptions about what it needs to look like. And I think oftentimes people shoot themselves in the foot quickly because they go, well, this doesn't look like the idea I had of a relationship. And because it doesn't look like that, they don't adjust. They don't, especially in the world we live in today, right? Like, fuck, man, like Tinder and all this shit just makes it too fucking easy.
Swiping away and
you're like, oh, well, this one doesn't, literally like you're in the bathroom on the date and you're already going like, well, let's see if anybody else is available tonight. And again, you guys like literally got stuck in a jail cell together. And of course, this is the insanity about it. All the other stuff already had to work out. He had to be ready. You guys had to connect for a month. There had to be a little bit of this and a little bit of like
excitement, getting to know one another,
and build up beforehand. And then you got this opportunity. Honestly, I think you guys got like 2 years of relationship in like 6 months.
Absolutely.
Because all those little escapes are exactly those moments where you would go, both of you, not love both of you, but you both would have gone and like got some alone time, talk shit about the other person a little bit, connected with somebody else who might have been exciting and shiny. But because you were there, you had to figure out how to, like, I remember the conversations we've been having over the last 6-7 months with both of you, but like, you had to figure out how to get over stuff that people sometimes don't figure out how to get over for like 2 years later.
Well, also throw in, you know, towards the, you know, the past 4 months of Tom just studying for the bar exam. That was super challenging. The second room in my place was taken over by his stuff. And for 10 hours a day, he was studying and I didn't see him. And it was really challenging for me. And
what came up for you during that time?
You know, not the shoulds, right? This isn't how it should be. This isn't what this aspect isn't what I called in. And then I realized I flipped it. I'm like, I get to be supportive for my person right now. I get to hold space for him. I get to provide a space for him. And I know, and I trust and believe it's going to come back as it always does. And I just kept coming back to, I want to be the woman that I know I can be. And it really allowed me to, you know, even in moments that were challenging, I would not bring it to him. I talked to you, you know, and I'm proud of how I showed up in those 4 months, just completely taking care of him, the dogs, the house, supporting him so that he could study and pass this exam.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's almost like the lesson for me to anybody who's listening is looking for relationships or is in a really fresh relationship is if you can make yourself take off the mask, take off the costume and show up despite yourself more authentically than you ever could fathom.
And heart open even in the most strange of circumstances.
Yeah.
Heart always open and believing that I'm deserving of this, whether it be love, a relationship, happiness. I'm deserving of this. So you're in that vibration of just, I'm deserving of this. And those are the thoughts you say to yourself. And when you do go into a dark place, you know how to pull yourself out and you have the proper tools and you have the proper support, whether it be friendships or family or therapists or healers, knowing that you have a podcast that you love that you can just put on and walk and then find yourself again. Like we have to continue to just remind ourselves that we're deserving of whatever it is that we want.
And then once you get that thing that you want, then there's work to keep it, that entity of the relationship at high vibration, putting in the work, choosing each other every day.
Yeah.
And I like to say that there's like two individuals in a relationship, but then there's the relationship as a whole.
Sure.
So sometimes I get to take myself out and make decisions that are for the betterment of the relationship.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what was happening those 4 months while he was studying. And I, was very challenged by it.
It was what we kept saying when you and I would have conversations and you would call and you'd be frustrated. Understandably, your home is taken over. He's in this mode for 10 hours a day. Never mind how he was feeling.
Yeah, of course.
But you wanted attention. This is this little girl who's like, hey, once again, I'm being abandoned. And what we kept coming back to is like, what's Rachelle going to be like when she's 9 months pregnant? What's she going to be like when she's 5 months pregnant? When you are in the newborn phase, who's going to be there? And that gives me goosebumps because Tom is such a provider and the way he cares is so deeply. He's going to blow you away.
Well, he already has.
He already has. And the way he'll take care of you tenfold because that's just what he does and the way and that's the way that a man and a woman care for each other, or two men or two women or two people that love each other. You show up fully, even when it's uncomfortable and not fun.
Yeah. So on that note, you guys went through these hells and these beautiful, pleasurable vows. Like before the studying, you guys got to celebrate and like really be together in ways that most couples don't get for their first 6 months ever in a relationship.
And how about our friend groups all just completely vibing?
Yeah, we like have a great new friend group. We were
trips to Joshua
really
Tree.
And I mean, we've been to his parents' house for Shabbat. So like
instant family.
All worked, all beautiful. And then we've shared the rest with some of you through Instagram and social media since this happened. But I'm assuming you don't all follow all of our stories right away. So I'll just share that at the end, literally right after he was done studying for the bar, like the weekend after he got done studying,
the next day,
you guys went on vacation.
Yes.
And the vacation you went to was to Cabo.
Our first time ever traveling together because of the pandemic.
Right. The first time was him traveling to your house.
Yes, pretty much.
7 months earlier. And then you guys go on vacation to Cabo.
Rachelle planned a trip to Cabo.
Yeah, you were so nice. You planned this whole trip to Cabo. It was really great. It was the first time you guys got away with. And weirdly, by coincidence, we end up on the same flight as you, 8 rows ahead of you, wearing
again, Ted and
effing wigs.
Ted and what was her name?
I don't remember your name.
Ruth.
Ted and Ruth.
So we were wearing
disguises
after like running away from you guys in the airport so you wouldn't see us, because while your guy was studying for the bar, he planned a getaway for 4 couples to Cabo so he could propose to you at the end of the 7 months.
Yes.
And now like there's some women pulling over and like beating up the steering wheel, throwing up and hating you. The Neshama Project is one of your, so if they can talk shit to you online, that's one of the good places to do that. If you want to get some jewelry for yourself after this.
Nice plug, yes.
But at the end of all of this, all of us end up in Cabo for like a weekend. He took you to this beautiful hotel and like just proposed right by the ocean. And had planned all this. Like
I still don't understand how that happened.
Under the radar. Which to this day, Tom, if you're listening to this, you're probably not listening by now because you hate me for even having this on the podcast. But if you're listening right now, I'm so happy that this happened long after I proposed to Sophie. Because I apologize to all the men who know you and now have to figure out how to propose. That was fucking insane.
Whole different level.
Insane. I mean, I guess in some ways I wish Tom was there to help me figure out how to propose because I fucked that. New
career for him, just helping men or women figure out.
Oh my God, what a career.
He has so many backup plans.
And it was epic. It was amazing. It was beautiful. But it was such a cool ending to like, it was like this beautiful bookend because at the time it felt like we're now in the middle of potentially closing down again, but it felt like things were starting to loosen up. So it was really this beautiful bookend to at least phase 1 of what I saw as the pandemic. Like we all shut down, you guys locked down and kind of like developed this relationship. And then just as it felt like things were opening back up, your first trip, you didn't know this, but your first trip ends up being your like prenuptials, like literally getting engaged.
Day 1 of our first vacation ever, he proposed. Yeah. really set the bar high.
No idea. She was in awe all weekend. She just kept looking at us and just shaking her head and just being like...
Surprise 1 was just getting away and having time together. I mean, I picked him up the day before. He looked like actual death from the bar exam. He took it at a hotel. We get on the flight the next day. I'm in my own world. I have zero clue that you guys are on this flight. You'd think I would smell you or know you. No, again, Corona on our side. The masks helped.
Masks and sunglasses. Masks and sunglasses.
And we get to the hotel and there was just one surprise after the next. And then he proposes, and the funny joke is that I was
Just
laughing.
broke
I was
laughing.
laughing for a minute because I was just so confused. It just happened so fast, and she did such a beautiful. It was just so special. We were walking out. There's the photographer. There's this beautiful
Musician.
guitarist playing "Stand By Me," and then there's someone pouring champagne. And right as I'm noticing that, he's down on one knee, and so that was surprise one. And we had our photographer take our photos, and he had a drone. Or just playing on the beach, and I didn't even have really time to message anyone. He's like, "Okay, we're going to dinner." And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, "Tom, we just got here. Where are we going right now?" So he had surprise 2 planned. Little did I know.
You called me in the car.
I texted you in the car. Yeah.
You FaceTimed me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And called me. I didn't pick up the FaceTime because I'm waiting at the restaurant for you.
So we get to the restaurant, and it's like the sun is setting. It's this like famous restaurant, and he's like,
He timed it to the sunset, for the record. He timed it. So when Rachelle came around the corner, her 3 best couple friends were sitting at a table at the best table in the house with rocks and the sunset at that exact moment. And she turned the bend.
And he's like, out before as I turn, he's like, "I have another surprise for you." And I look at him, I'm like, "Oh God, what?" I don't know if I can take it.
And then I jump in your arms.
And then they're all there. And I mean, it just, I was just been floating since still.
Yeah.
And then the third surprise, which was really, really special and meaningful, he had a video of all my families who he still hasn't met yet because of the pandemic. All of them saying Mazel Tov and congratulations. And he compiled it together. My little niece saying Mazel Tov.
Oh.
And that really meant a lot. And then he got to tell me a story about he called my dad and asked for permission in like a really traditional way. And that was just continued icing on the cake. And then we just had the best weekend
of our
ever.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted to take it all the way to the end was because, I mean, there's so many lessons, but I feel like I was just talking about this in the group I led today, but it is so easy for us to believe that we must get swayed by the circumstances of life, right? I literally I did a meditation today with our group, and I equated it to being on a surfboard in the middle of an ocean, and you're hanging out and it's all calm and everything feels great. It's the way you always want it. And you see a wave coming up and it scares the crap out of you because you're like, "Oh shit, I can't sit on my board anymore the way I want to. What's going to happen?" And I feel like that's the way we live in life. Everything gets settled, and a lot of us get really comfortable with that. And anything that shifts that, anything that removes that comfort feels really scary and anxiety provoking. But in reality, it's like a wave in the ocean. And it's gonna keep coming. I know right now seems insane. None of us have gone through an epidemic like this. It hasn't happened in 100 years. Really, if you compare, because 9/11 is not this. Like 9/11 was incredibly scary for a small group of people relative to the entire world. World War I, World War II, the last plague. Like, it's been a long time since something like this happened.
Yeah.
And yet, I feel like there's always a way of shifting perspective and landing into, I'm not going to say the good in what's happening, but like essentially riding that wave of whatever it is that's happening. And what I love about your story is, again, just so we're clear so nobody thinks that this is not the case. You guys fight.
Oh yeah.
Things happen in your relationship. You don't always agree on things. There's
2 whole individuals coming together as adults
that have very strong personalities.
Yeah, and it's still magical in the middle of the craziest time in all of our lives. And for me, it's like there are these diamond moments, and we can just gloss over them and we can just ignore them because there's other stuff that is really painful. Or we can recognize that each one of us gets to sort of look at what's happening around us and pick those moments in our lives. They don't have to be as big as meeting the love of your life and getting engaged, but they're here. Like, they're always here. And I think that's what I love so much about your story is I didn't know Tom 6-7 months ago. I now have a new friend, right? Like, all these little pieces they're so powerful. And for you to, in reality, 2020, which for most people listening right now has been the worst year of your life, 2020 is like the beginning of an entirely new magical existence for the two of you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel really lucky. I feel really blessed. I feel also, to speak to what you were just saying, I have committed to always trying to find the good. My entire life, I've tried to look for the silver lining. And I hope that this story gives people just that even during a really fucked up, dark time in all of our lives, there's still goodness happening. There's still love. There's still joy. There's still people giving birth. There's celebrations to be had. And more than ever before, I think we need to stay as connected to that as we can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've said this before, it's not new, but one of the things I love about my relationship with Sophie is I wasn't like that at all.
Yep.
And Sophie, for whatever reason, rat face. I wish you guys could see this video right now.
Wait, I do it too.
Sophie in her sexiest. One of the things, Sophie, that you always had was this ability to just kind of look around as the world's falling apart around you and be like, oh, that's really nice. Let's go over there.
I'm going to make some art out of this. I'm going to make some beauty out of this.
Yeah. And I don't know if to call it a skill or some innate ability. Like, I don't really know what it is, but it's definitely deep inside of you. And so I sort of get to feed off I always joke around, like, you know, if you fill your own cup enough, then it starts spilling over and then other people get the benefit. I'm like, I get the spill over from Sophie. Same. Yeah.
I mean, you and I are definitely more similar than I am with her.
Yeah.
And there were times where I'm like, you are the most annoying best friend to have. And then there are times where I'm like,
you should try fighting with her at 11 when she's like, no, we're going to talk about this. I'm like, I just want to go to bed. She's like, no, we're going to have this really uncomfortable conversation right now. And I'm like, all right.
But then you
2
have
hours later,
the breakdown,
it's much better.
breakthrough. And then it's like, what would Sophie do? What would Sophie believe? I've been able to witness you guys transform and grow your careers, your life. And like, it's come having that belief, that inherent belief that abundance and goodness is possible, I think is just the driving force behind what makes you you. And I too feel like I get to, you know, swim in that and bask in that. So
and that spillover. Yeah. And that's in a way, I feel like that's what happened for you too, right? You guys could have written all this stuff off. When it got annoying the second week, you'd be like, go to your fucking parents' house. This is ridiculous. I don't even know you.
She did say that a few times.
I don't
and
even
he did
know
go.
you.
There was, the beginning, he didn't move in fully right away. He stayed with his parents for a little back and forth. But like, it's you know, one of the things I've been noticing, it's like, I feel like we're all our own unique puzzle, right? And for so many years, I was just trying to take these other puzzle pieces and jam them in to fit. And I'm going to make you fit. I'm going to make you fit. And then they don't fit. And then, one of them's chipped and it just like, and then you just meet someone and it just fits. Doesn't mean that there's not work to do. Doesn't mean that it's going to be always easy, but that fits. And then it's like, you want to do the work. You want to, I don't need to be right, even though I love to be right. Like, I want to have peace and I want to communicate and I want to understand how to be the best human and also partner.
Well, I love that also it comes back to your separating. There's me, there's you, and then there's the relationship. Yeah. Same thing goes for what we love to say all the time, which is, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? Well, we want to be happy. Mm-hmm. I want the relationship to be happy. Mm-hmm. So therefore, I'm going to put my head down, go in for the hug, and just suck it up so that there's happiness and goodness for the relationship and for us as individuals too.
Yeah, and we do it to our best ability. Just everybody listening right now, do not confuse this with like perfect translation into reality. Yeah, we're all human.
We're both defensive. We both want to get our point across.
Yeah,
it's just that to me, it's a work in progress. I keep talking about this all the time. Mm-hmm. I now embrace, we just had this, it was yesterday or the day before, I don't remember what happened. So, but we were just talking and you mentioned something, it was about the kids. And I just felt myself getting defensive. And I just went, okay, hold on. Just don't say anything. Lean back a little bit and like just take it in and think about the way that you can process this.
And also just knowing that the person if you're with the right person, whether it be your best friend or your lover or whoever it is, father of your children, they want the best for the relationship, but they want the best for you. So take it from that perspective of like, my person isn't going to want me, isn't going to say something to me just to hurt me.
Yeah, I think that's a trust thing, though.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know
and-
that
and-
everybody has that right off the bat.
For sure.
And to speak to that, there were so many times where I felt that I was being shamed or gaslit in relationships where my attachment challenges or my traumas were used against me. And it's so different in this relationship because Tom understands where things come from, but he holds me to the highest,
Yeah.
And so even in moments where I got activated at the beginning of quarantine and nervous, or he knows where it comes from. But here's a really great example I want to share with you guys. So a few years ago, I dated this guy who's a surfer. And every time he would go surf, it would bring up my abandonment issues. I'd worry that something bad would happen to him. I'd worry that, X, Y, and Z would happen. And also 4 years ago, I was in a much different place than I am now. And so whenever I'd ask him to check in with me, he just got annoyed. He'd find a way to shame me and wrong me. And then 2 weeks ago, Tom was going to go Tom went surfing. And I simply just hey, babe, do you mind just texting me when you get in and out of the water? He's like, sure, no problem. And did it because he knows where that comes from.
Yeah.
He wants me to not have to worry. He wants to ease my heart. And he knows that I'm not trying to just be
Controlling.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a good point. And it's, again, right, it's so subtle and yet so important to find somebody who's willing to put in that tiny little extra bit of work, because that's all that makes the difference. We talk about the Gottmans here a lot, and you talk about that idea of contempt. I don't even know, I want to talk to them about this sometimes. I don't even know that contempt is not fixable. Sometimes some of us don't pay attention to the level of judgment that we have of others. But if you notice it in you or your partner, you got to address it. If there are these little edges to your conversations, if you, even in your head, you don't even have to do this out loud, but if you put them down, oh, she's just dumb, he's just incapable, she's just lazy. If that language is happening in your head, you got to fix that shit, or that relationship is doomed.
Oh yeah, because if that language is happening in your head, that's the energy you're giving out, and it is felt. I know, I've been in those relationships before.
Yeah, 100%. So I love this. I love the story. We wanted to bring you back, first of all, because you haven't been on in 2.5, 3 years or whatever it is.
Feels
But-
great
I
to
also
be back.
I want to do a modified last few questions,
Let's
and
do it.
instead kind of quarantine version, but also love version. So instead of what is the
I love
best
this.
advice that you've ever received, what is the best advice you could give for relationships?
For relationships right now?
Yeah. Or even just in general, given what you've been through.
Communication, find a way to have peaceful communication, and when things are charged, to give things some space so that both people are coming from a more grounded place of communication. And then so much understanding and breakthroughs, I think, can happen from there, and have fun together.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about Tom is that he loves music as much as I do. Remember my last relationship, all I wanted was can you just dance with me in my living room? And he couldn't get out of his own way to dance with me. And I had friends, and I put that on my list of what I was looking for. I want someone who's going to dance with me. And some of my friends were like, why do you need that? I'm like, my spirit needs that.
That
And
was the red flag with the last boyfriend, as you tried to dance them in the street.
and he couldn't.
And he refused,
Yeah.
and I said he's out. And I'm a Taurus. I'm just when you're done,
Yeah.
you're done. And I was done with him. And you kept it going a little longer. I'm like, he wouldn't dance in the street.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
And that comes from me and my doing inner child work and giving myself permission to have joy that I didn't have before. And then here comes along Tom, who loves dancing with me and is a DJ now. And
Right, he's
so,
DJing while studying for the bar,
Yes.
by the way. DJing in the bedroom
Yeah.
at 11 p.m.
That's your
so
partner.
I would
That's
say
great. I love it.
communication and making sure to have time for play and joy.
Love it.
If you could give advice about some tangible tips for relationships, like calling in the one.
I would say, everyone talks about making that list, and oftentimes that comes outside of us. I made that list from a place of how it feels. So I would write down what I'm looking for in someone, and then I would say, because this would make me feel this way. So why did, it became really important for me to be with someone who is Jewish. Why? I write because I wanted that shared tradition, to raise a family with that shared tradition. So I went into a deeper feeling. So it wasn't just a bullet point.
Exactly.
And so that being connected to how things feel versus how it looks is the
Huge.
best advice I can give in not just relationships, in career,
And
in
manifesting
everyday.
the life of your dreams. How do I want to feel today? Not what do I want to check off?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of. We've talked about this before, I feel like, on this podcast, but a lot of people think that the road marks that they're going to hit are external, but actually all you're going for is the feeling.
Yeah.
I really can't wait to meet the right person. Well, what are you trying to do? Because if you're trying to reach a feeling internally, how does that happen? Or I wish I could have that car or live in that house or be in that country. What feeling are you going for? And then be really, really clear on that. It's also a much better compass to whether you got there or not. Because I talk about this with my clients all the time, but if you think there's a number, I don't care if that has to do with money, car, house, children, weight. If you think there's a number you're going to hit and be happy, I have a newsflash for you.
Yeah.
You are wrong. There is zero external number that you reach and you're happy. You reach that when that feeling of satisfaction and internal sort of contentment with life happens. And the number could be totally off from where you thought it would be, or even more importantly, maybe you then bring that contentment to all of your experiences.
Last question.
Yes.
This podcast is called Ignited. When it pertains to your relationship with Tom, when you feel maybe challenged, what reignites the joy and the love and that honeymoon phase and that feeling in your belly?
When I'm in his arms and when we dance together and when we're walking the doodles.
It all comes
Simple
flooding
stuff.
back. Yeah, simple stuff.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? I feel like this time period has just really connected us to like the simplicity of what really matters.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
I love it. I love it. Thank you
love
so
you so
much.
Love you guys. Thanks for having me back. What a treat.
Had to.
Absolutely. Tom, sorry for talking so much about your personal life. But
We love
it is
you,
what it is.
Thank you
Tom.
both for making the weekend of my life
Oh, of course.
just come to life and
I almost had a nervous
celebrating.
breakdown, but it's fine. Anything for you.
Up
Anything
next,
for
let's
love.
plan a wedding.
Yeah. Give me a minute. Thanks,
You
everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
See you next week.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.